The Kansas City Chiefs have an offseason that everybody is going to be paying close attention to for obvious reasons, right? The story of the NFL these past 3 years has been a team that has made it to the Super Bowl in all of them and won it twice, the Kansas City Chiefs. But how long can they continue to do this is the question. Because while some people will say, as long as they have Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, they're going to be, doing this every year. Of course, football is a sport that requires more than just one player and a coach. So, if things go wrong, they could have a tougher time to get there, although you always have to give them a chance when they have those two people in the building. But nonetheless, let's get into the Chiefs, where they were last year. What were some of the issues? Because they did have issues last year. And ultimately, where can they improve? And where did they try and improve? And how well will it work? First, we have to look at where PFF graded each of their positional categories at every specific position. Not a huge fan of how Patrick Mahomes played apparently last year. Only 14th, but let's just be honest, we all know Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league. At least most of us feel that way. There's some exceptions. I think Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league by a good margin, and I think that's probably PFF quarterback system, not a exact science, I would say. But the other stuff I kind of mostly agree with. So the receiving core actually ended up 15th. It was lower, but with the receiving in the playoffs, it ended up being 15th, which is interesting. They were the first team, since I have done the stats back like 14 years ago, or going back 14 years ago, they were the first team to be below 17th in terms of how the receiving core was to make the Super Bowl, although they ultimately did not win it. Pass blocking was 17th, really good interior, okay right tackle at pass blocking, rough left tackle the whole season. They tried several different players, it never fully worked out. Run blocking was actually good, because again, that good interior. Running was fine, 15th, which for the resources they put into the running game, the fact that it's 15th in terms of, again, just people rushing is pretty impressive. Defense did grade really well, although I will put a bit of an asterisk on coverage. You go through, and while they did play some good teams, good receiving cores last year, weirdly, every team that had multiple good receivers, this is something I noticed when I was doing my preview for the Super Bowl, every team with multiple good receivers, one of the receivers was hurt during that game. Like Tampa Bay, Chris Godwin and Evans, they were both hurt when they played the Chiefs. The Bengals, they had one of their guys hurt when they played the Chiefs. The 49ers had one of their guys hurt when they played. It was just that weird thing where it kept happening. So the depth was a real issue in the Super Bowl. It didn't really hurt them for the season, but it is something they decided to address this offseason. So first, let's look at their losses, and the biggest one is the top of the list, Joe Thuney, who was an All-Pro at guard last year, even though he played some tackle last year, because that was essentially the conclusion they came to, was let's just move him off of the guard position and put Thuney at tackle. It maybe was a little better, but ultimately now they have, where Thuney honestly did about as good as you could ask for someone to do in that situation, but he's an all-pro level guard. They let him go for essentially peanuts. They wanted to save some money. Not a move I loved, to be honest. I think their offense, if I'm the Chiefs, I'm helping Mahomes and helping protect him, not making that worse when it probably was their biggest weakness in the Super Bowl. DeAndre Hopkins, who again, they traded for, didn't fully work out as they hoped. Justin Reed, who's been a nice piece for them, plays the system very well. Losing him is not ideal. A couple of other notable pieces, and just to be clear, these are only the most notable losses. There's some other ones involved, but for the notable ones, Trayshawn Wharton, who was a nice defensive lineman, got a big deal with the Panthers, and that's kind of what happens with some of these guys, right, is they essentially get Super Bowl tax of they get extra money because they come from a great system, and so for the Chiefs, you kind of just have no choice, but you have to find ways to replace these guys. Justin Watson, who was a depth receiver for them, but did show up in certain ways at times over the years. You also have Samandre Pirine, who again had a huge play in the conference championship game to help ice that one, and McCole Hardman, who had a huge play in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. McCole Hardman, only player in Super Bowl history to catch a pass in overtime, or catch a touchdown pass in overtime. So that's pretty impressive. Ultimately, those are the players that are no longer with the Chiefs. Also, the two players below are two players that technically could still be with the Chiefs, but are free agents, and I suspect will not be with the Chiefs. DJ Humphries, maybe they re-sign Humphries to a low deal if he's willing to, compete for a starting job. And then Carson Wentz is the other piece who I think they probably let walk. As for their additions, so part of why I'm pretty sure Carson Wentz won't be there is they added multiple, I think pretty good young quarterbacks who could be backups. Gardner Minshew and Bailey Zappi both have had success, just not consistently. So ultimately, you have to feel like one of those could be pretty decent. And Mahomes, he gets banged up sometimes. So being able to have a good backup, that does matter. Also added Elijah Mitchell. We'll see how well he does I'm sure a depth piece. Again, the Chiefs lately have not been pumping resources into the running back position after they drafted Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the first round, and that didn't work out. They've kind of gone the approach of let's just get players who can play, and we trust our great interior will do the rest. You didn't have Jalen Moore, who is kind of the biggest question of this offseason. Jalen Moore has been a backup with the 49ers and honestly has played really well at left tackle, or at least I shouldn't say really well, but he's played well at left tackle when he's come in and played. So finished his rookie deal. Now, someone who does have some playing time. Granted, here's the concern. For one thing, left tackle is a position that tends to be pretty easier to play when you're in the Shanahan scheme. That's probably not the best way to phrase it. It's a scheme that helps out left tackles or makes left tackles, lives easier, I guess I should say. I don't know. There's a better way to phrase it, but usually, it's a situation that you can thrive in, and Moore has thrived in it. But now we'll be in a tougher situation. Don't get to kind of sell as though you're pass blocking or run blocking as often. They're going to know you're pass blocking more. It's also just worth mentioning, this has happened before where Joseph Noteboom, the backup tackle for the Rams, when he had to come in, he played really well. So Andrew Whitworth was their starting left tackle, Noteboom with the backup. Whitworth, towards the end of his career, would get hurt sometimes. Noteboom would come in and play well. So then the following season, when Whitworth retired, the Rams paid Noteboom a decent amount of money to stay on as left tackle. He didn't do as well. That being said, they're not paying Moore a ton left tackle money-wise. It's around $15 million a year. If he can thrive in that situation, they just got a franchise left tackle. So that's the concern if you're a Chiefs hater, but it's also the concern if you're a Chiefs fan. Also, the last player on this list, as I mentioned, they wanted to help out the cornerback depth, and so they added Christian Fulton, who had some okay years with the Titans, ultimately had his worst year in his contract year, which is never a good thing. Signs a deal with the Chargers, and honestly looked pretty good for the Chargers and shown to be a capable corner. And this is something the Chiefs do maybe better than anybody. Bill Belichick was always huge on this. Weird how the best defensive coordinators sometimes do the same things, which is pay attention to cornerback depth, right? You want to make sure that you don't just have two guys who can play. They thought that they were going to get, I think, more from Joshua Williams. Last year, Jalen Watson did not have a great Super Bowl, although he did have a good year. But again, as I mentioned, not going up against top competition. Trent McDuffie was great, but had to play outside instead of slot because they lost L'Jarius Needs. So just getting another guy in the building to help kind of make that secondary great is really important. Because again, you could argue, I would say the most important thing of the Chiefs Super Bowl run 2 years ago was Mahomes. The second most important thing was their secondary because of how often it shut teams down. It shut Baltimore down. It shut the 49ers down for a good chunk of that Super Bowl. So making sure that they can keep that strong is a way that the Chiefs can get back to, instead of watching someone else hoist the Lombardi Trophy, hoisting it themselves. Also, I think this is kind of just as important with the Chiefs because you know that they're going to lose some players. Who did they keep on the roster? Well, first, they kept Trey Smith. They franchise tagged him. And while some Chiefs fans aren't thrilled with this because Joe Thuney was the better player than Trey Smith Smith's a lot younger. This is, coming off his rookie deal. He wasn't a first-round pick, so that's why they had to tag him after the fourth year. But ultimately, he's the kind of guy where, again, if you want to help out the offensive line, you got to keep a guy like this on the roster. They didn't just kept some defensive lineman depth. They lost Wharton, but they did keep Charles Omenihu and Mike Pennell, two defensive linemen who, again, neither one of them are. I'm not sure if you can buy either their jerseys in the team shop, but ultimately they're effective players who do help out the overall team. Nick Bolton, who, again, Super Bowl hero from a couple years ago with his defensive touchdown, nearly had two the last time they played the Eagles, or I guess 2 times ago when they played the Eagles. But ultimately they wanted to keep him. Makes sense. He's a great player, fits that scheme so well. Kareem Hunt, yeah, why not keep him? He was honestly pretty solid last year, and he doesn't need to go anywhere else, so that makes sense. The couple of questions, again, Juju Smith-Schuster, sure, why not? Marquise Brown, though, is a bit of a question mark. Again, just a question mark, right? It could work, it could not work out. But they're paying him roughly the same amount of money that they would have paid Joe Thuney. Only a couple million less. And while I don't hate it in a vacuum of kind of a buy low candidate, I think the question is this the move the Chiefs should make? But again, they kind of have to make these small moves in the margins, right? Oh, I went out of focus for a second. But they kind of have to make these small moves, right? They can't do a ton of major moves. They don't have the cap space to do so. That's the disadvantage of being in a dynasty. So ultimately, while we can criticize some of these moves here and there, their hands are definitely tied behind their back in each offseason. They have to figure out what they can, and it's possible that they got a franchise left tackle and helped out their secondary, which were their two biggest issues last year. Still have an issue at guard. I think they're going to address that in the draft. They're probably going to draft a guard, which you can do late in the first round, although I never love going into draft needing to draft a certain position. I like to kind of have your options open. They have Kingsley Sumatea, who they said they trust in that situation. We'll see. But ultimately, yeah, I do think the Chiefs, listen, they're human, but I don't think that they've lost too much to where I'm worried about them, like, in terms of, like, being good. I think the thing about the Chiefs, though, is the standard is making the AFC Championship game, and to be honest, the standard is making the Super Bowl. They do that more than anything else now in the Mahomes era. In 7 years with Mahomes, they've made the Super Bowl in 5 of them. So that is the standard. And do I have concerns about them making the Super Bowl? Sure, there's ways it can go wrong, which maybe weren't there last year, but ultimately, you do kind of have to just trust that they're going to be good again. But also, we can't just, like, not do analysis on football, right? That's my job, is to talk about what happened. And yes, I do see issues on paper, so I have to talk about them, specifically at the offensive line, which I think is the biggest concern. But if they hit on more and they hit on a guy in a draft, this could be a team that wins the Super Bowl again. And even if they don't, it still could be a team that wins the Super Bowl again. So, yeah, those are my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.